Yeah, I know. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? So I'm, as my colleague have said, I'm Antoine Maalouf. I am the engineering asset manager at the Royal Melbourne Hospital. And what we're doing today is we are taking you through the journey that we had to go through in order to digitize our asset management process and to create the framework and the policies and the new positions and responsibilities. Responsibilities that we needed in order to create better operations. I will start first by introducing our organization. So we're the Royal Melbourne Hospital. We were established in 1848 in this two-story cottage in an area that was called the district of Port Phillip at the time. And quick fact, we are actually older than the state of Victoria. At the time, we were part of New South Wales. Then we came back to our senses and decided to do things better. We are one of the two major trauma centers serving Victoria with 1,084 beds, including 650 acute beds, and the rest around subacute, including rehab, dialysis, aged care, and we have around 11,000 staff members. We had exponential growth throughout our years. When we were in that little cottage over here, we served in the first year around 98 patients in total. Today, through our ED, we get that same number around every 8 to 10 hours. So the problem that we had is we had a fragmented data management. So we had fragmented asset management. There was no responsibilities. So they were reactive. We have lack of data, lack of any basic information that we needed in order for us to be able to implement a good asset management plan. This photo over here that was shamelessly created using AI shows sort of the expression of many of myself and many of my team members every single day when we get the call for a problem that we were facing. So we had inconsistent data, unclear naming standards. We would have one pump, the exact same pump, have 5, 6 different specifications. Then we buy another pump. They create the 6th one. And there was no shared risk approach applied. And asset management was something in the back, something that's done by somebody else. It's not our problem. It's not our responsibility. And and that created a big issue for us because it began that we had the problem justifying the funding. We didn't have the documentation. The next time the state of Victoria comes up, says, I have a grant program for you to apply to replace your most critical assets. They request a paper trail. They request a paper trail. They request how many times that asset have failed, how many times that room has closed. What is the impact of that failure? We didn't have that. On paper, that asset that is 15 years old and past its end of life is in perfect condition and nobody's complaining on it. But in reality, it's a completely different thing. And then we had low trust in forecasts because if you don't have the base data, there is no forecast. Any forecast that you get is completely junk. So to try to solve this issue, we had an asset audit. We were hoping that asset audit will solve the problem, but what it showed us is what we didn't have. The first thing that we learned is that asset audit gives us a snapshot of what the asset was at the time that the auditor have entered that plant room. And that was back in 2022 or 2021. So being in 2025, we still don't have the data. Why? Because we don't have the framework and we didn't have the processes and the procedures for us to make sure that this data is up to date. And we ended up with something like this when it comes to what we need to replace or what year we need to replace. The largest chunk of our assets needed to be replaced here, which was, it doesn't make any sense. And if you present it to anybody, including the exec, they're going to say, you need to do a better job. And without foundation, there was no forecast. There was no leadership regarding the decisions. They were there was no asset ownership. Who is responsible for managing this asset? Is it us? Is it the department? Is it the ward? And there was no data and risk-based prioritization. So when do we replace the asset is depending on whether it has a high impact or whether the person who is impact is very loud. So we had issues where a certain area, we're receiving a lot of somebody who, I think everybody has somebody in their organization who complains every single day about the same thing. So we had somebody who has a little nick in the wall in their office. And if you look at the data, well, sounds like the worst thing that the Royal Melbourne Hospital have currently, where everybody else is silent. You can have a full room that is completely busted and nobody's talking. And of course, there was no life cycle data for planning. Assets were purchased without looking at the full life cycle of the asset, and there was no plans on what to do when the asset is done. And also, there was no standards for data formatting and accuracy. As we have said, some areas where the data accuracy is pretty good, others is pretty not. Sometimes you go into the specification, it says generic compressor. And that's all the data that I have in there. Generic compressor that was installed in 2010. Now, nobody could do anything regarding this data. So what have happened here is that we became very reactive. We were very reactive We only respond when something breaks down. This is a little example, is when one of our ICU beds we had a failure in there and it closed down. That knocked out an ICU bed for a whole week at a moment's notice, which is a big problem for an organization. And considering us, and I want you to understand how big this problem is because we are a 24/7 operation. We do not close over Christmas. We don't close over New Year's. And for a lot of the assets that we have, we're looking at around 10, 15, 20, 25 week lead times. So sometimes I get an email or a phone call at Friday, 4 p.m. My pan washer has broken down. Can I get one by Monday? But I'm sorry, but the lead time for that pan washer is actually 10 to 15 weeks. And then we look and we investigate further, and that pan washer the data says that this pan washer is in good shape and it's new, but in reality, when you look at the asset, it's have some rust on it, it's in a very bad shape, and that should have been replaced 20, 30 weeks ago. But they waited until the last moment for us to be able to replace it. So, enough of the problems. What is the solution that we have? The first one is we established the asset management framework. And through, like any other framework, what is the more important of them is the position of the asset custodian. Now, we asked the question, who is the best person to know the status of their assets in each location? And that is the people who are there every single day. These are the managers of each unit. These are the managers of each unit who know their assets, who know which equipment is giving them trouble, which equipment is critical for them, which equipment, if it fails, I have to shut down my operations. And that allowed us to decentralize the responsibility for asset management from an asset manager sitting in their office in engineering to the different areas of the organization, and that also sent in the responsibility and accountability for the assets. And of course, for us, that included a large change management throughout the organization. That includes a buy-in, first of all, from our board directors and our executives, and also the creation of new policies and a new strategic asset management plan that incorporate that. So, we as a public hospital, we're not a business. We're not here to make money. Our number one goal is patient-centered care. This is our main goal. And what we have done through the system is to make sure and to have everybody understand how asset management is central and is extremely important for us to be able to deliver that patient-centered care. So first, it starts with the people. Developing the asset custodian, have a buy-in from the different parts of the organizations about that, enforcing their capabilities, developing their capabilities, and creating creating a community of practice around asset management that creates a platform that, first of all, reinforces the role of the asset custodians. It makes sure that the information is standardized and consistent throughout the organization, and it also creates a forum for knowledge sharing. And then that will develop into the systems, and this is where IBM Triariga came in. IBM Triariga was already there, but what it allowed us to do is it became the single source of truth and the central source of information. So that allowed, some of our assets were on spreadsheets on somebody's laptop. Some of the assets were on a Google Drive. Some were in Triariga. Some were on a whiteboard on somebody's office. So we brought everything together at the same thing, create a single source of truth, and to ensure that that single source of truth follows the standard that we require, and allowing us to report on the data, and allowing us to make sure that our plans are being implemented. And all of that allowed us to reach the patient-centered care. Now, one thing we need to understand is the complexity of our organization. So if you ask me, what is the classifications of the buildings that you guys manage? My answer would be every single one of them, from class 1 to class 10. We also have different uses of the areas. So So from the ED area to offices to outside spaces to residential care, every single one of them happen. So how do we prioritize our risk? How do we prioritize our asset replacement? The first thing is there's two components for each risk assessment. The two primary components. The first one is what is the importance of the asset? And that goes by the VBIS classification or the UMDNS, depending on the type of asset, whether it's clinical or whether it's engineering. The second one is the space importance. What does it serve? Does it serve an ACU or does it serve an office? Does it serve ED or does it serve a parking lot? That is different. And the third component after those two is the asset condition of it. So by having the space criticality with the asset criticality and its condition, that will give us a sort of a unified risk rating that allows us to prioritize our asset replacement. So I'll give you an example. So the reason why we need this is important. Why? Because I can have two identical assets in the same location, but they serve two different areas. And the areas that they serve is the real change for criticality. I can have, for example, two heat exchangers that provide heating to two separate areas. One of them is level 8 on main block, which is where our exec and our boardroom is. And the other one is on level 6, which is where level 6 of B block, which is our ICU. Now let's say we have a failure in 2, and my contractor says, today I can only solve one of them. Which one would you choose? Now I know the CEO will be calling, it's too cold here, I need service. Can you please fix it? I'm sorry, Shelley, but you need to wear a coat because we have another priority here. And that decision, and the important part here is that decision is not based on who complains the most, or what do I think, or what do somebody else think, is based on this. So where did we go? So now we have one system and one source of truth. So it's a central hub for all asset. Whether that asset is a defib, or whether that asset is a pump, or whether we are looking at a building, it's all in Triariga. If you want to search for something, it's already there. And it is configured to support the risk framework. So that risk framework that we showed is there. So we have the risk assessment, we have the condition assessment, we have the and where it serves, and all of that is imported in there. And we have done it to support multiple industry naming convention. For our engineering assets, we're looking at VBIS. For our medical is UMDNS. And we made sure through the framework, through the community of practice, to make sure those are implemented, and that allows us to have an end-to-end asset lifecycle management. That made us smarter on how we can manage our assets, allowed us to reduce failures, allowed us to respond closer to what we need, to respond closer before an asset is failed, and that came back, allowed us to do one thing, and which is the main source of, or the main raison d'être of our organization, which is patient care. Now I'd like to pass the mic to my colleagues.
Thank you, Antoine. So, yeah, hi, I'm Tony from the CAFN team, and also I've got Leela as well, so she'll be talking about the data aspects a bit later. So I'll be talking about more of the technical aspects, especially in regards to Chariga. So Antoine has gone through a lot of detail, so I'll just be quite brief on some parts, but one of the things is that we have to make sure we have to define our assets and standards properly. So as what he has mentioned with the medical device assets, we are using UMDNS for spec classes. So it's just so medical device assets are highly regulated, as you all know. So they need to be regulated by the TGA, which is in Australia, and they go and create the ARTG, which is the Australian Registry of Therapeutic Goods. So all medical devices that's registered through there are considered safe and can be used for patient treatment. And what the bonus is that we have from ARTG is that they also manage the data to give supply information and manufacturer details. So we are adding all that as part of standards into Chariga and giving us greater management data. So along with that is also, they also have something called GMDN, which is it's like an asset use descriptor. So it's, again, can help us classify the asset specifications for medical device assets. And so to make it a bit more complex, or it's just more hierarchical, we do work with the UMDNS, which is a standard that's used globally around the world as well, so that it's a lot more hierarchical, so we can actually put it into the right categories as well. So what you see on the screen up here is just examples from the system. So you can see that we hit, like for example here is a bariatric bed, and we have some specification names, and it's under a specific spec class, like the base electrics, and we do have a GMDN and ARTG. So a lot of that we would store in the system as standards, and if there's any recalls further on for the assets, we can actually clearly find the assets that are affected. So the other major category is what Antoine has mentioned is the infrastructure assets. So these are all the very heavy assets like generators and HVACs. So we are being a bit more simple here to use the VBIS. So VBIS is the Virtual Building Information System. It's a growing standard within Australia, especially within healthcare and also building systems. So the potential is going forward, if we do have some potential integrations down the line, we can very easily just apply to our assets. So as he's mentioned quite earlier, that this is a very important piece of the puzzle, especially for the configurations that we've done. We need to move to an asset risk management framework. So he's gone through an elaborate example, so I will just be very brief. But the main thing is that there's 3 components that's coming through. So we're storing space importance inside the space class of the primary location of the asset. So then this will feed into the asset criticality, which is stored onto the specification class, as what we mentioned earlier was VBIS and also UMDNS. So that's the scale from 0 to 100, depending on how important it is to the organization. So then they'll calculate a criticality, and then that feeds onto the asset condition, which is can be from end of life to all the way to excellent new. So all that comes together becomes the asset risk rating. So this is just a more visual representation. It's a bit all over the place, but this is the asset record inside Chariga. It can be linked together with the space importance, as we mentioned earlier, so you can get the space criticality. So this is an example of one that's inside the medical imaging. And then we have the asset importance up here. So this is where the specification of the asset is listed here and is linked to a specific spec class, and that spec class would have an importance. And then finally, we have the condition assessment, which is the, we actually work with our partner Trixie to go and create a asset inspection application, which you can do real-time condition assessments. So this came back, and for example, it came back as a fair, so that kind of, and this is an asset criticality of A, and then it's a space criticality of 1, and therefore it calculates a high. So this is so this then gets fed into an asset custodians department data of all the assets that they are in either ownership of or they are interested in using. So this is just a quick slide to show the asset condition inspection app that we've worked with Trixie. So the main thing is that it allows us to quickly assess the condition of the asset based on several drop-downs on these 6 different points, you can say. And we've provided some details for the assessor to if they're not quite sure what is expected for each of those points, so that they can actually go and open that for more information. So all the asset service partners and also asset custodians can have the ability to update the asset's condition. So yeah, Antoine did mention that the whole the divide and conquer is an issue. So having a cultural change into embracing asset management was a major change management feature, especially when we're working with clinicians. They are special creatures in that they are non-technical, they're time-starved, but they're also very patient-focused. So bless them. And so we have to make sure that we need to have an application that's simple enough for them so that they will adopt and use the system, especially when we've got 50,000 assets around the sites, and so they're very important for them to keep the assets updated. So this is going to be a busy slide. I'm going to give you 1 minute to read everything, and then I'm just going to stop. But no, I won't do that. So we got here. So what I wanted to point out is that we had to really simplify the workflow for them so that we can increase the user adoption. So, for example, here is these are the general questions we have. So I don't know where to start. It looks so complicated. There's so many fields. What do I do? So we had to go and to introduce a quick link. Like a quick asset and data integrity report section that points out all the assets that may need to be updated with data. And then we point to number 2 is there it goes, oh, okay, so then the asset form is a little bit complicated. Not sure where to go. So we decided to create a wizard to actually help them where they can scan asset ID barcodes. And then it will open up a screen, and that screen will have like all the fields that's of important data for them to go and fill in. And then we have one of the other things is that, I've got service partners that have service reports, and I want to actually attach it to the asset. They are not within the service management module, so they wouldn't be raising service requests which has work tasks, and you put then you put service reports again. So we had to automate all that through a wizard, and then so they can actually bulk bulk add these service report entries against assets. So just so they can keep the maintenance history. I'll pass it over to Leela. It's through the document manager. I can go through a bit more a bit later. Yeah.
Thank you, Antoine and Tony. So now, we already have framework in place. We have the asset configuration tool built, and we have all the asset data loaded into the database. So what's next to bring all this data together into one place? What do we need to achieve this? Anyone? Yes, that's correct. We need a BI tool. So the powerful BI tool that we use in our organization is a Power BI, and we have developed asset management dashboard using Power BI tool. And before I begin presenting the dashboard, I would like to briefly highlight the on-premises Power BI report framework setup that we have implemented in our organization. And this framework is designed to keep data reporting and analytics within a secure internal environment. So this is the Power BI report, on-premises Power BI report server framework setup. As you can see, the step-by-step process. First is the data sources. This framework connects to multiple data sources, including but not limited to IBM DB2, SQL, Excel, SAP, and many others. So these data sources provide the new raw information used for reporting and analysis. And next, coming to the Power BI desktop report server, this is where we create our .pbx reports that are optimized specifically for on-premises hosting. And this tool allows the users to build reports and analyze the reports. So after creation of the reports, we deploy the Power BI reports into the Power BI report server, so where we host, manages, and schedules the reports. This eliminates the need for cloud-based solutions, allowing the organization to maintain control over its data and reporting infrastructure. So we have achieved cost savings with this framework, as we don't need for pro or premium license as for every user. So after publishing onto the report server, the reports are now accessible to the internal user through a web portal. So users can securely access and interact with reports using a web browser. So the framework supports secure user access via Windows Active Directory and single sign-on, ensuring only authorized personnel can view or access the sensitive data. So overall, this framework supports the organization's maintain data security, control over its reporting infrastructure, easy internal access to business intelligence insights. Yeah. So coming to the asset management dashboard. So this dashboard provides a high-level view of our asset base, focusing on both financial value and operational risk. At the top, as you can see, the three key metrics: the total replacement value, total asset count, and the split between the assets with replacement value and a non-zero replacement value. So this gives us the immediate sense of scale and value of our asset portfolio. And the center piece is a risk matrix, which plots asset criticality against asset condition. The condition categories runs from excellent to end of life, and the criticality category runs from unassigned to A. So this heat map allows us to quickly identify high-risk areas, such as critical assets in poor or end of life, which appears in red. Conversely, the green indicates lower risk categories, lower risk assets showing well-maintained and non-critical assets. So this matrix helps prioritize asset management and maintenance by showing where the biggest risks to service delivery exist. So it also helps discussions between clinical and operational teams about asset renewal planning. So the next is the assets due for replacement, and this slide provides an overview of assets that are due for replacement, helping leadership make informed decisions around capital planning and asset maintenance. So this organization is managing around X million worth of assets across 46 total thousand assets. So this value represents that capital tied up in critical assets, and understanding this figure helps us with strategic decision making. So out of the total assets, 36,000 assets have a documented non-zero replacement value. However, there are 10,000 assets that have currently a zero replacement value. This could signal missing or incomplete data, and that would require further review. So as you can see in the bar chart, for this year, the forecasted replacement value stands at X million, which covers the immediate need for asset replacement. And for the next year, the replacement are projected to increase significantly with a forecast of Y million. So this indicates that the replacement pipeline will intensify in the near future. So this dashboard allows for the customized filtering by department, asset condition, asset risk rating, and asset criticality. So this flexibility allows the team to prioritize high priority assets for replacement and focus on most critical needs. So the table on the right provides a detailed breakdown of individual assets due for replacement, including asset IDs, forecasted replacement dates, estimated costs. So this level of detail provides, helps with precise budgeting and prioritization. So in the next slide, we will be reviewing the total replacement value of assets by risk rating, focusing on key departments. So the departments that stand out with highest replacement value include radiology and imaging and emergency department. So these departments are critical and their equipment plays a vital role in the daily operations. So as you can see, the replacement values are characterized by risk rating. So the extreme risk rating has the highest replacement value, next followed by the high risk rating and the moderate risk rating, and finally comes the low risk rating, showing that these assets are of lower priority, but they still need attention. So let's see what are the extreme risk rating assets in radiology and imaging department. So as you can see, when you select the radiology and imaging department and select the extreme category, it shows the table shows down the assets that are under extreme risk rating under radiology and imaging. So it's 2 radiographic units. So the forecasted replacement value for the 2 major assets totals to X million, so which includes radiographic units or fluoroscopic units, which are expected to due to replace by April 2026, and the radiographic units mobile set to be replaced by January 2026. So this data shows that significant future investments are needed, especially in assets with high risk categories such as radiology and imaging and emergency department. So these departments will require careful budgeting and planning to ensure replacement of critical equipment is done efficiently and on schedule. So next, coming to the top specifications dashboard. This dashboard provides a high-level view of our top asset specifications by replacement value. So users can filter down by department, asset risk rating, asset risk category, and many more to narrow down the view. And the main chart shows the bar graph and the line graph. Bar chart represents the total replacement value per specification, and the line graph indicates the total count of assets per specification. So this quickly highlights the high value equipment, especially in areas like CT and MRI systems. So, and below a detailed table links specification to individual assets, showing replacement date and showing cost and risk rating, which are all critical for planning. So overall, this dashboard helps us prioritize high risk, high cost assets for smarter replacement planning. Thank you. Over to Tony.
All right, just to finish off, just some final points. Just make sure that when you have an asset management system, you want to make sure that it's actually a good system you can configure and not necessarily customize, but at least that's to certain specifications. So we picked Chariga as our platform. Is a very good system, very cost configurable, and also they you can do all sorts of good stuff with it. Make sure that it's going to be a good use case for people, so that they are at least adopting the system. So you're updating the actual assets. And lastly, is what Leela was mentioning. Make the data sing for you, and then all your execs will love you. So please, go through it and think about that for Chariga especially. That's all, thank you. So it's depending on what type of assets. So with medical device assets, majority of it is actually managed by our clinical engineering team. So they have vast, especially if it's something that's on the ARTG, they normally do manage it. So that's a lot of the medical devices are them. However, we do have edge cases where, like for imaging, for example, like the more radiographic ones. So we do have radiographers that are as the custodians that they manage their data because they know the specifications and all the differences though. So in most cases, like we have two major asset partners. So we have engineering team and we've got clinical engineering team. They really do make a lot of decisions, but like we are slowly teaching the asset custodians to the level that they can be supervisors to also manage their own data sets. So yeah, but in most cases, clinical engineering and engineering do help us with all that, yes.
So we connect directly to the IBM DB2 database.
Yeah, it was a pretty hard process. We had a full-time business analyst that worked with organizing community of practices. So every quarter there was bite-sized news or what's coming and what to expect. And he was very good at communicating that to the masses and getting them excited. I mean, for me, I've seen the interface so many times. For me, I don't feel excited, but I don't know how he's managed to do it. But he has portrayed that, look, these are the features that's going to solve your problems. So eventually, we had a few people kind of go, yeah, I want to try it out. So we kind of get them to champion it as well. So we had the imaging and ED to kind of help give us that voice. Yeah. Correct. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. So for most cases that a lot of the because we're pretty much just past the initial stages, so we want them to be kind of responsible in making sure the data is correct is what is the first thing. Especially we had a lot of issues with assets not having the right locations because again back in the 2022 is when we had the asset audit and we kind of used that data for a long time. So one of the things that the asset custodians will help for is to make sure that those are correct. Yes, they don't really make the decisions on how important the assets are, but that also is a community within those asset partners. So like clinical engineering and also engineering, they kind of make the agreement of what the importances are. But other than that, they just make sure that if something is broken or something that's not working, it's at least that they know that's within the, because we also have a primary organization field, and we have created for specific asset groups. So like imaging will be one, and then we also have ED will be one. So any of those assets that belong to them, they would see all that, and they will kind of go, yep. They look at it every day. They deal with it every day. If it breaks down, they go and raise a service request with clinical engineering, for example, and then they will then put all the data in as well. So it's still a team effort kind of thing. It's not like we're not expecting the clinical custodian to do everything. They just more of just want to make sure that if something's not right, you need to voice it out kind of thing. Yeah. So there's two ways. One is we've given them access into the portal. So if you want, we can show you what, like, as an example, another time. Yeah. Correct. So they log into that. It will be on their portal, like a start center, that thing. So they'll have a view, and then on the top right-hand side will be my assets, which has got to do with my department. So all the assets associated with them. So then they can kind of go into their, if they, especially with medical device assets, if it's within the area, normally it should be inside that list. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.